what should law firms, small law firms, solo and decent sized firms, what should they be using as far as technology? Not only for like their practice management, but for sort of like client intake, and also I do want to kind of cover this because you mentioned checks, like paper checks,
right? Right.
So like
that's
like
still a thing
too. Yeah, listen, I still have paper checks somewhere. I don't know
I
where.
have paper checks as well. When do I use them? 2006. Yeah, it's really funny because when analog, I think is the right word, because when you look at most law firms, most small law firms, they're kind of like Walkman, right? Now you got to like ramp up from that to something else. The thing is, what you want to do is take a look at all your processes, and if it involves like an in-person transaction of some kind, figure out what the equivalent is to a digital transaction. And that could cover a number of different things, right? So you talked about like managing the practice. So case management software is very popular for lawyers, productivity software as well. And what those things do for you is they don't necessarily replace processes, but they guide processes. And they also free you up in terms of time spent, right? So if you're using like a Clio or a MyCase or a Rocket Matter or one of the case management softwares in conjunction with like Outlook for email and calendar, or Google for email and calendar, as well as like an accounting software like QuickBooks or Xero, you can apply workflows to your systems so that everybody knows how to approach a case in the same way. There's consistency for the people who work for you. There's consistency with what you do. There's consistency for the client. You're reducing malpractice. You're operating at a faster clip. And then because you have all these systems in place that you can look at data on at any given point, well, now you've got the ability to have fewer meetings because you can know the status of a case just by clicking on it. Man, when I worked at law firms, we would have, and this is one of the reasons I stopped working at law firms, Saturday morning, we would go in and have like a case brief. And literally we would bring the boxes into the conference room and look at like every single case we had. And I said to myself, this is awful. Like, why do I want to spend my weekends like this? There's got to be a better way to do this. And clearly there was. The other thing that you talked about, like payments, right? What does intake look like now? And this was already changing pre-pandemic, but what are the digital processes you can leverage there? So we're on a Zoom call right now. You don't have to have client meetings anymore. You don't have to have initial intake meetings in person any longer. You can use Zoom or any number of other products. You got Microsoft Teams, you got Wire, you've got Signal. There are untold numbers of video conferencing tools you can use. And then the same thing for paper signatures, right? You don't need to do that anymore either. And people act like this is a new thing, but the e-sign act was passed by the federal government 20 years ago, which basically said that wet signatures were just the same as digital signatures. And it's taken attorneys a long time to adopt that. So HelloSign, Adobe Sign, DocuSign, those are all e-signature platforms that people could use like tomorrow. Super easy to use. Electronic payments for law firms, right? Like, you don't want somebody like going to get you a check because that's like an 18-step process. It takes a long time and they have to have the money in their account. And then now you're getting smaller retainers. You have to collect more regularly. So let them pay by credit cards. You pay a processing fee, but you get paid more and you get paid quicker. And then you eliminate I got to go to the bank. I got to get a cashier's check. I got to bring it back home. I got to put an envelope. I got to put a stamp on it. I got to mail it to the lawyer's office. Not even to mention what happens when it gets to the lawyer's office and how many steps you take after that. So that's the process I talk to law firms about going through all the time. Like, look at every aspect of your of what you do in a given day. Figure out what the tasks are and then automate as many of them as you can.